Stauffenberg talking to a general when all of a sudden, they are attacked. The general is killed while Stauffenberg is gravely injured during the air raid. Meanwhile, at the German Eastern Front at Smolensk, Russia, General Henning von Tresckow attempts to kill Hitler by putting a bomb inside a liquor bottle. Unfortunately, his attempt fails when he receives a call that Hitler safely arrived in Berlin. The next day, Tresckow goes to the Army High Command in Berlin to retrieve the liquor with the bomb when he is greeted by General Friedrich Olbricht. He, then, warns Tresckow that their party might be discovered because one of their members are arrested. But Tresckow just shrugs it off. He just tells Olbricht to find a replacement for their arrested comrade. The scene changes to the 1st General Military Hospital where Nina, Stauffenberg's wife, visits him. The doctor tells her that her husband lost an eye, his right hand, and 3 fingers in his left hand. Then, Stauffenberg changes to his uniform and he proceeds to award the soldiers that survived the attack with a medal. Afterward, we see Olbricht recruit Stauffenberg to join the resistance. When the night falls, Stauffenberg goes to the meeting of the resistance where they're planning on how to deal with Hitler. They suggest that they should confront Hitler head-on. This is when Stauffenberg enters the conversation by asking what is their plan after taking down Hitler, to which they answer that they would simply take over. Seeing the shallowness of their plan, Stauffenberg leaves but Tresckow convinces him to think of an effective plan. Stauffenberg goes home where he is greeted by his children and wife. While watching his children play, he realizes something. The next day, he recommends to the resistance that they should use Operation Valkyrie. It is meant to mobilize the reserved army to maintain order in the city in case of an emergency. After killing Hitler, they will make it as if the SS troops are making a coup, then, they will initiate Valkyrie to deal with the SS troops. Although Stauffenberg's idea is great, they point out that they will need to redraft the order of the Valkyrie to exclude the SS troops with Hitler's signature on it. And finally, they need the help of General Friedrich Fromm, the head of the reserved army, because he is the only one who can initiate Operation Valkyrie. With all of this in mind, they proceed on taking their plans into action. At the Reich War Ministry, Olbricht and Stauffenberg meet with General Fromm and ask for his help with their plan. Unfortunately, he declines to be directly involved, but he promises them that he will be silent about this. Then, we see Stauffenberg convinces his colleague, General of Signal Corps Erich Feldgiebel, to help them as well. Afterward, they begin redrafting the order of the Valkyrie while Stauffenberg describes how this operation will help them take over Germany with ease. Tresckow cuts him off and says that he's been transferred to the front lines. He, then, puts Stauffenberg in charge of the whole operation. The next day, Olbricht tells Stauffenberg that he's been promoted to Chief of Staff of the Reserved Army. Stauffenberg declines at first, but Olbricht points out that when he becomes the Chief of Staff, he will be closer to Hitler, and they all need that opportunity. After their conversation, a soldier named Werner von Heefen, who's going to be Stauffenberg's adjutant, enters the office. Stauffenberg, then, directly tells Lieutenant Heefen that he's committing treason and asks him if he wants to be a part of it, to which Heefen says yes. The scene changes to Stauffenberg and Heefen traveling to Hitler's private residence, where Fromm introduces Stauffenberg to Hitler personally. Hitler, then, commends Stauffenberg's sacrifice for the country and tells his colleagues that Stauffenberg is an example of an ideal German officer. Fromm announces that Stauffenberg will brief them about the plan to mobilize the reserved army for the upcoming invasion. But Hitler dismisses it. Stauffenberg, then, bravely speaks out and tells Hitler that he had redrafted the order of the Valkyrie and he needs Hitler's signature on it. Fortunately, Hitler didn't thoroughly read the redrafted version and he quickly signs it. Afterward, we see an explosive expert named Colonel Albrecht Ritter Merz von Kornheim discusses the type of bomb they will use to take down Hitler. Then, Stauffenberg is ordered to execute Hitler and Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS. They strictly remind him to not proceed without Himmler in the room. At home, Stauffenberg tells his wife that if he fails, they will definitely come for them. Then, we see him prepare the bomb. Shortly after, he bids goodbye to his family and they leave for safety. Meanwhile, the reserved army receives a standby order, and they all gear up. The scene changes to Rastenburg where Stauffenberg and Heefen attend a strategy meeting at the Wolf's Lair. Unfortunately, Himmler is not present, thus, he's not permitted to proceed with the mission. With that, the reserved army who's currently on standby receives the memo that it's just a drill. Then, we see Olbricht and Stauffenberg being scolded by Fromm because they mobilize the reserved army without his permission or knowledge at least. He, then, threatens to arrest them if they do it again. Afterward, Dr. Karl Friedrich Goerdeler points out that they must also take down Himmler because he's just like Hitler. But Stauffenberg berates them for prioritizing politics over their country. Offended, Dr. Girdler suggests to others that they should relieve Stauffenberg. But General Ludwig Beck cuts him off and warns him that Himmler wants him arrested. Dr. Girdler quickly realizes the danger and he immediately leaves, bidding his good luck to Stauffenberg. Then, they give Stauffenberg all the authority for the plan to work. The scene changes to Stauffenberg and Hefen going back to Wolf's lair. Asking for a place to change, the two prepares the bombs. Unfortunately, due to the hot weather, the meeting place is transferred to more open space. But Stauffenberg is determined to continue his mission. Reminding a soldier to call him whenever they receive a call for him, he enters the room. He placed his bag under the table near Hitler and receives a call shortly after. With the call as the signal, he leaves. Meanwhile, a soldier accidentally kicks it and moves it behind the table leg. Then, the explosion happens. Stauffenberg and Hefen immediately leave while Feldgiebel quickly informs Quernheim that Hitler is down. Then, he orders his men to disconnect all communications in and out of the lair. Quernheim tells Ulbricht that he should initiate the Valkyrie as planned, or at least put them on standby. However, Ulbricht doesn't want to risk it without getting confirmation that Hitler is actually dead. As soon as Ulbricht leaves, Quernheim releases a standby order to the reserved army. Meanwhile, Stauffenberg and Hefen arrive in Berlin and they are confused because they see no reserved army around. Back to Quernheim, Ulbricht is scolding him for releasing a standby order when the phone rings. Quernheim answers and gives it to Ulbricht as soon as he realizes that it's Stauffenberg. Stauffenberg, then, scolds Ulbricht about the whole reserved army situation. He, then, asks for Fromm but Ulbricht didn't know. Stauffenberg orders him to initiate Operation Valkyrie and if Fromm doesn't cooperate, they will arrest him. Following Stauffenberg's order, Ulbricht unhangs Hitler's portrait, revealing a secret compartment where he takes out a document. He, then, signs it and orders for the initiation of Operation Valkyrie. Afterward, they go to Fromm and tell him that Hitler is dead. However, Fromm doesn't cooperate with them. With no other choice, they arrest him and temporarily locked him up in one of the rooms. Outside, Stauffenberg sees Beck where he introduces Wolf Heinrich Graf von Heldorf, the chief of Berlin police who pledges his assistance to Stauffenberg. Then, other people show their card to him, the card that symbolizes that they support the resistance. Overwhelmed with their support, Stauffenberg orders them to work hard on securing that every government quarters are theirs and that all of the SS commands are gone. They will finally be able to erase Hitler's Germany. Then, we see some reserved army put up a border in the city while others go on arresting the SS troops for the reason of treason for trying to conduct a coup. Meanwhile, Stauffenberg, Beck, Ulbricht, and others are being busy securing that they have captured all parts of the city and that their plan is working well. A rumor is also spreading that Hitler is still alive, but Stauffenberg dismisses it, saying that it's just propaganda of the SS troops. Meanwhile, at the command center, they receive 2 arrest orders. One is from Stauffenberg requesting for the arrest of a minister that declined to cooperate with them. On the other hand, the other arrest order is from the Wolf's Lair, requesting for the arrest of Stauffenberg. The scene changes with the reserved army, led by Major Otto Ernst Riemer, on their way to arrest the minister. But when Major Riemer enters the room, he gives him the phone and when the person on the other line speaks, Riemer is shocked. It is Adolf Hitler and he confirms to Riemer that he is still alive. Realizing that the reserved army is duped, they prepare to arrest Stauffenberg. Back at the command center, they decided to stop all communications from and to Stauffenberg while they open it for Wolf's Lair. Then, we see the reserved army releasing all the people they arrested. Meanwhile, a general arrives and looks for Fromm. Ulbricht tells him that they are in command of the place right now. The general shouts at them that they are committing treason because Hitler is still alive. Then, he is taken where Fromm is and locked up as well. Going back to Stauffenberg, he asks a woman employee to contact his family but they can't connect with them. Shortly after, they start losing communications and they hear on the radio a broadcast that Hitler is still alive after a failed assassination. Stauffenberg, then, asks them to send a broadcast to tell the people that the information is fake. He insists that Hitler is dead and that Operation Valkyrie is still ongoing. The party is becoming hopeless but Stauffenberg assures Beck that he saw the blast and swears Hitler died in it. Ulbricht apologizes to Stauffenberg, and leaves. Other people start leaving as well. He asks the woman once again about his family but they can't really get a connection with them. With that, Stauffenberg tells the woman to leave for safety. He, then, picks up his gun and tells Beck that they need to leave as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Ulbricht has just finished writing a letter when he hears a noise from the outside. The reserved army just arrived. They start arresting everyone on sight. Then, we see Stauffenberg, Hefen, Quernheim, and Beck attempting to escape when they come across Fromm's men, who's got Olbricht arrested, and a shootout happens. Beck and Kornheim flee while Stauffenberg and Hefen try to fight back. Unfortunately, the reserved army enters the building and they are surrounded. It turns out that they already got Beck and Kornheim captured. In a room, Fromm finds them captured and immediately convenes court-martial where he laid out their punishments. He wants Beck arrested while Olbricht, Kornheim, Hefen, and Stauffenberg executed. Riemer tells Fromm that he is ordered to take the 4 alive, but Fromm doesn't care about his orders. Beck, then, asks for a pistol, to which Fromm gladly provided. Olbricht tells Fromm that killing them won't change his involvement with the plot, but he quickly denies it. Hefen also added that he's just as guilty as them. And Stauffenberg warns him that no one will be spared. Then, General Beck shoots himself in the head. The scene changes when we hear Hitler's own broadcast, while we see what happens to the people involved in the plot. Olbricht, Kornheim, Hefen, and Stauffenberg are taken outside where they will be executed. Olbricht goes first, and as the firing squad shoots him, we see the chief of Berlin police arrested. We also see Henning commit suicide. Then, Kornheim is called up next when we see Feldgiebel arrested and stated to be executed as well. Next is Dr. Karl, who is hanged as his punishment. They call up Stauffenberg next, but when they're about to shoot him, Hefen steps in front of him, catching all the bullets for him. Lastly, we see Colonel Stauffenberg being shot to death. In his dying moments, Stauffenberg remembers the last time he saw, hugged, and kissed his wife. Unsurprisingly,